Yeah, so because you're stuck with me for an hour and a half, I thought maybe you would like to know a little bit more about me. So I have 23 years of experience with horses, both in France and in Arizona. Okay, thanks. 17 years of experience with beef and dairy cattle in France, Arizona, and California. 10 years of experience with Navajo sheep in Arizona. 10 years of experience with livestock guardian dogs and herding dogs in Arizona. I have a master's in breeding system of production from France. I was a livestock advisor for beef producer in France. Then I got a PhD in natural resources with a major in ecology, management and restoration of rangelands and a minor in animal sciences from the University of Arizona. And for a year, I work as a livestock and natural resources advisor in the Central Exterior for the University of California. And since January, I'm here in Arizona and I'm a rangeland management extension specialist, and my focus is plant-herbivore interactions and targeted grazing. Okay, now I would like to know who you are. So usually when we give a talk, we don't like people to be on their phone because that shows that they're bored by your presentation. But I'm going to ask you to get your phone if you're willing to, and have 4 questions to ask you to kind of know who you are and how I might direct my talks toward you to be useful. So if you don't mind, there's a QR code or the link, so you can take a photo of the QR code. Then you're going to end up to that app, and today we're not going to talk about guinea pigs, but you're going to meet my guinea pigs for that app because that's the first time I'm using it, so we're going to see if it works or not. And then just don't download the app, just go to the mobile site, are we all here? And then you're going to end up to that page, so please choose guest. And then you're going to end up here, and when I'm going to start the quiz, you're going to have to select the question, and then you're going to select your answer and then hit submit. Is it working or not?
Yeah, it says when your presenters present.
Perfect. Okay.
Things will show up.
Oh, do you mind going back to the QR code? My phone was on vacation.
Oh, sorry, yes. Okay, you should see it. Hopefully it works, I don't know. Okay. So that's just the first question to see if it works. So how are you feeling today? Are you happy, stressed, excited, tired, bored? Or bored. So once you have it, okay, so I think we still are waiting for some people to answer.
No feeling wrong.
Hot. I'm sweaty hot.
I didn't think about that. I'm sorry, we're in Phoenix, I should have planned that. Okay, so we're going to look. Okay, you're happy, excited, tired. I'm sorry, maybe you need to go take some coffee at the break. Okay, second question. So do you have experience with livestock? Yes, I own some animals, yes, but I don't own any animals. No, but I want to own some and other. Okay. Okay, so let's get to know. So what type of livestock do you want to raise the most? The way that quiz is done, you can only choose one, even if you wanted to raise more than one species. You have cattle, sheep, goats, horses, pigs, poultry, rabbits, and other. Okay. Okay, so just so you know, a lot of people are going to be unhappy about my presentation.
All cows all day.
Because I'm a grazing specialist, so I'm going to specifically focus on cows, sheep and goats. I'm going to mention some resources for pigs, poultry, and rabbits, but I won't go into details, but I'll have a handout with a good website that has some good information. And then the last question, what is the first reason that you want to raise livestock? To produce meat, to produce milk, to produce fiber, to graze your land, to have pets, or other? Okay.
I mean, my phone is
Okay,
being slow.
perfect.
That's fine.
Thank you all for participating in that.
That was really cool. I like that.
Okay, so now let's talk about the livestock types. So first of all, what does livestock mean? The term livestock includes cattle, sheep, horses, goats, and other domestic animals ordinarily raised or used on a farm. What is a ruminant? So instead of explaining it to you, I found a video online that explains it pretty well. It's a short video.
With Chevy Equinox EV, you and your money can go further in America's most affordable EV with over 315 miles of range, starting around 30.
I think we have to close the presentation
Okay.
first, yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We got lots of time. It's groovy.
I'm a Mac person, so
Yeah, me
Microsoft
too.
and I
I
am
am
not happy.
100% a Mac person.
Okay.
Little red X is on the wrong side on these computers.
Oh, I think the
Where's-
presentation is still up here. Oh, I don't know why it's.
Well, that's
Aha! Is that on Google?
yes. Yeah. There you go. Okay, thank you.
For $9.95, go EV without changing a thing. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
Unlike humans, all grass-eating animals have a special stomach with 4 chambers, namely rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum. Let's see the process of digestion in grass-eating animals. The animals quickly swallow the grass and store it in rumen, the first chamber of the stomach. In the rumen, the food gets partially digested. The partially digested food is called cud. The cud is pushed into the reticulum, the second chamber of the stomach, and from here it is sent back into the mouth for thorough chewing. The process of chewing the cud is called rumination, and animals which chew the cud are called ruminants. The rechewed food is swallowed and sent into the omasum, the third and the smallest chamber of the stomach, to absorb excess water from the food. In the omasum, the food is broken down to even smaller pieces. This is then sent to the last chamber, abomasum, which is also called the true stomach. The digested food then goes into the small intestine, where absorption of nutrients takes place. A large sac-like structure called cecum, present between the small intestine and large intestine, also contain bacteria that help in the digestion of cellulose, a carbohydrate that is present in grass. So, you now know why cattle keep chewing all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It seems so complicated.
It is. I don't know what else. Sorry. Okay, so here are some common ruminants that we have: cattle, sheep, elk, goat, bison, antelope, giraffe, and deer. And this is a photo of a sheep, which is a ruminant. And so look at, he has no teeth on top of his mouth. And now if we look at horses, because I think some people wanted to raise horses, you have teeth, they're not ruminants. And they have teeth on top and at the bottom. If I have that photo, it's just to show you that horses can be very destructive when they're grazing because they can get really close to the ground and go up to the roots. While you have ruminants like cattle, sheep, and goats, to be able to graze, they have to use their tongue to grab the forage. So they're not as destructive. A lot of people, I'm a horse owner, I love horses, but they're pretty destructive on your land. So now I'm going to focus, as I said, on 3 different species of ruminants. We're going to talk about goats, sheep, cattle. When you answer that you wanted to produce meat, that might be something that after this presentation you may be interested in going to, in addition to the people that answered pigs and rabbits. So the goats are known as concentrate selectors. That means that they're going to eat more woody species. And then the sheep are intermediate type. That means they're going to go for forbs. And then we have the cattle that are grass, roughage eater, and they're going to focus on grass. They cannot eat a prickly pear pad or things like that, but that's their preference in their diet. And that's due to their morphology. So the goats have a narrow muzzle, a strong mouth, and a large liver. The sheep have some small mouth part, narrow muzzle, and large liver, and then the cattle have a large muzzle and large rumen. So they cannot be as selective when they're grazing. For the feeding reason, goats are eating very frequently and they eat small meals. For the sheep, they still eat small meals but less frequent than the goats, and then the cattle are going to eat large meals and not frequent. So usually cattle are going to graze in the morning and in the evening, and then during the day they're just going to ruminate as we saw in the video. And for the quantity of forage that they have to eat per day, a goat is going to eat roughly 2 pounds per day, and that depends on the type of goat that you're going to raise. And then we have sheep that eat 3 pounds, and then the cattle are going to eat 20 to 26 pounds. So it's kind of obvious a cow is way bigger than a sheep, but that's something that you have to keep in mind depending on your acreage. Maybe it's better to go with small ruminants than a big cow that's going to have a lot of forage available. Usually as a figure, we say that a cow is going to eat 2% of her body weight per day. And regarding predators, goat and sheep are very susceptible to predators and cattle are not as susceptible. This is a graph from a publication that's just to summarize what I just say. Cattle and bison are bull grazer. They're going to eat predominantly grass diet. They graze the whole plant, they're not really selective, and they spend a lot of time ruminating. Then if we look at the intermediate selectors, where we have our sheep and elk, they eat grass, forb, and shrub, and they're moderately selective, and they don't spend as much time ruminating. And then we have our concentrate selectors, where we have our deer and goats, and so they're going to eat mostly forb and shrubs, and they're very selective compared to cattle. I'm going to explain a little bit of the difference between grazing behavior between sheep and cattle. So we have sheep. Sheep usually have a very strong flock instinct, and they're often going to graze together. Cattle are herd animals. They like their peers, but they like to graze by themselves. So they're going to be a little bit more scattered on the landscape. And here, all of those red lines are trails that the cows have done in that pasture. Now we're going to look at some drone footage. If it works, maybe it won't work. Okay, well, I don't know if I can, well, it's not working, sorry about that. So in that video, it was just that a ewe was starting to move, and then everybody else, no matter what they were doing, they started to move with her, and even the guard dog followed it. And then I had an example of a video where the sheep got a little bit scared of the drone, so then the guard dog barked to say that it was dangerous, and all of those sheep got together and they were starting running as a group, which is sometimes for predators the perfect way to get something out of a hunt. And then for the cattle, it was just to show you that there were cattle all over the landscape and very well scattered, and here was the same. So I'm sorry that the drone footage doesn't work. So now we're going to look at how do animals learn. There is the concept of nature versus nurture, where nature is an inherited behavior. So on the left side, you have a livestock guardian dog, and on the right side, you have a herding dog. You cannot ask them to do each other's job. It's not going to work. They're born this way, they're going to do what they're born with in their genetic package. Then animals learn with the concept of nurture. They're going to imprint on their mothers, so they're going to look at what their mothers are doing, what they're eating, where they're spending time, which water they prefer, and learn from that. They're also going to look at their peers and observe the rest of the herd to do what they're doing and copy them. And then we have the individual learning by trial and error, which works in humans very well too. So we have the gut defense system and the skin defense system. So let's talk about the gut defense system. For instance, someone in this room has never had peanuts in their life. They try peanuts, they are allergic to peanuts, they're getting really sick from it, they're not going to ever do it again. Livestock is doing the same thing. If they get poisoning from a plant, they're going to avoid it as much as they can, except if they're starving, they ate all of the forage around, they're going to force themselves to eat that and get sick from it. So that's a very dangerous concept that you always have to have enough feed for them to not eat that toxic plant. For the skin defense system, the first time I came to Arizona, I was told by a rancher, do not touch the prickly pear fruit. They have very tiny thorns. So I understood the concept. But what did I do? I did it, and now I won't do that again. If you have kids, it's the same thing. If you say, don't jump off the couch, what are they going to do? They're going to do it because that's how we learn. So we're just like animals. We learn the same way. So an animal is going to use their senses like we do, see, hear, smell, feel, taste, and that's going to bring consequences. On one hand, we have negative consequences where they can get fear, pain, cold, hot, anger, or sick, and then we're going to have the concept of aversion where they're going to avoid and leave that area. So that's how they're going to learn. And then on the other hand, we have the positive consequences where it's going to feel safe, relaxing, they're going to have plenty of food, and so they're going to prefer that area. And they're going to seek or stay in that area, and sometimes that's why on rangelands we have a diversity of distribution where cattle or sheep or goats are going to spend more time, or even horses, in one part of the pasture and not necessarily on the other part. So you have to help them use the entire pasture for better rangeland management. So now we talked about types of livestock. How about breed differences? So we talked about the guard dog and the herding dog. They're my poster dogs. So as I said, we cannot teach them to do the other's job. So do you think that we have the same thing in cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, chicken? Yes, we do. So I'm not going to go into all of the breeds, but for instance, if you want to raise cattle, you have breeds that are better for dairy, breeds that are better for meat, some that can do both, and some that also are selected as draught animals. Then we have the goat breeds. We have the same thing. We have some for dairy, some for meat, some that can do both, and then we add some wool in the mix, and then some people just have goats for pets. If we look at sheep, we have the same thing. Some specific breeds for wool, for meat, both wool and meat, and for milk. So for instance, as I said in my presentation, I have a lot of experience with the Navarro. They're just in the wool, but they are excellent in meat. So there's some things that are not always represented in those graphs. And for those of you that wanted to look at other types of livestock, that's my only slide of diversity. So we have the types of pig, and pigs are going to be mostly for meat. But you see you have a lot of choices to make. And that's going to really depend on how much land you have, what size of pig you want, the one you prefer. Some are more cool to look at than others. And then we have the types of chickens. Some of you wanted chickens, so you have some that are better for eggs, some that are for meat, some that are for eggs and meat, and some that can be used in show. You could potentially get one for eggs and process it for meat, but you won't get as much return if you want to make a business out of your livestock. So how to choose the livestock type and breed that works for you? So I don't have the answer ready, but I'm going to have some advice. So as we talked about, if you're interested in meat, for instance, you can go with those 3 types of livestock, milk, the same thing. But if you want to go with wool, don't get cattle, they don't produce much wool. And if you want drought animals, it's not worth trying sheep and goats. So you're going to look at size and weight of the animals that you want to raise. If you want to be profitable, some breeds are going to give multiple babies, so that might be better for your business. Then the pregnancy rate, some breeds don't do as well at getting pregnant. Then the weight gain, if you are focused on producing a lot of pounds per calf, you want a breed that's going to put a lot of weight without much input. Then the nutritional needs, because if you buy a big cow, she's going to eat way more than a Highland cow, for instance. So you really have to look at everything. The milk production, if you're interested in milk, you want a breed that's going to produce a lot of milk. Milk is important also for meat animals because it's going to help grow the babies. Then we have ease of birth, and if you have a lot of pastures, if it's not necessarily your first job, you don't want to have to go every day pull out a calf or a kid or a lamb. You would rather choose a breed that just pop them out and then they're fine. Then you want to look at carcass quality, because you might be paid if you want to do direct marketing. It's better to have good quality to show it to your customers for them to come back and return to buy your meat. And also something very important that we heard today is talking about market and marketing. Don't buy animals before you look at the market and what you want to do. Once you have the animals, they're very expensive, so it's better to have a plan before you move into the action. So there's more things that I'm not mentioning here, but you really have to think about your objectives. So most people said, I want to produce meat. So then you look into meat breeds. And then your land. Your land is very important because, for instance, sometimes you can find cheaper animals from Texas, but they're not necessarily adapted to your land and your environment. So if you're in Arizona, it's better to maybe find a rancher that's close to you, and those animals have already been exposed to that environment, and you're going to gain a lot of time. And just do a lot of research. It's really, you need to get out there before you buy animals. You really need to look into it, because it's a big decision. It's easy to take care of dogs and cats. It's not that easy to take care.
I'm just starting. What would you recommend, like, for a person going into livestock? There aren't any organic processors, because I want to do meat, but I think that's going to be tricky. And if I choose to go forward with the meat, which goats probably would be the best? What do you think?
So I know we just had a talk about organics. I'm just going to give you, I'm sorry I'm on camera, but I'm going to give you some insight about organics. So you can produce like an organic farmer, not have the organic label, because if you go into the organic, then you have to give them money to have your, and when you're a small acreage landowner, you may not have the option to do that, so you can raise the animals. So I worked for 10 years with a rancher that is not organically certified, but he does everything like an organic farmer.
And then, sorry, do they market as like organic, and that kind of brings their price range up, and they can kind of
they do
market themselves that way?
So the advantage with direct marketing is that you have the customer in your face asking you questions. And so you have that story that you can tell. So I've done that speech because I've sold meat for 10 years with him.
At markets, at farmers market?
Yes, at farmers market. And so, no, we're not organically certified, but we're all natural, and we explain we don't do hormones, antibiotics, or grain feeding. So you just tell your story, and that's how you relate to the people. It's organic or all natural or whatever is very a niche marketing. So you really have to find your space at a farmer's market, because if you have a lot of farmers doing that same thing, you really have to find a way to put you aside, maybe choose a different breed that tastes differently, because there's a lot of competition. Organic farmers usually have a better price than conventional. Also something that's good to know is that when you direct market your meat, you're a price taker, a price maker instead of being a price taker. Because a lot of commercial producers, not necessarily small scale, but bigger in Arizona or all over the states, are going to produce a calf and take it to the auction or find someone to buy them, and they're not really going to have the choice on the price. They're going to take the price that they can get. When you sell meat, you do your own pricing. And it's easy to go online and see the different prices around. You also have to kind of adapt to the town where you're living. It's easier to go really high in Phoenix compared to a town like Tombstone or Bisbee, where you don't have the same richness in the population that's going to shop at your
Just saying.
yeah. So that's
I'm down that way, so yeah.
yeah. I'm talking by experience from down there.
Yeah.
So you have to adapt your prices like this. And
Do you try to distribute your products up here in Phoenix? Because that's one of my goals too, is to create a distribution channel from what we're doing in the rural farms to bring to the city. Because I don't know where to take the meat to be processed. I've just been looking.
I would probably say, I'm guessing what you're saying is process it.
Yourself.
No.
Process it as a regular, conventional, non-organic meat processing facility. But instead, because we don't have an organically certified meat processor, instead use the taste of your meat as well as your marketing to say like organic, naturally grown, to meet that market price that you set. That is similar to organic, and maybe if organic does come along later, since you've been practicing the practices anyway, you can transfer to being organically certified if you keep those practices now, but not without the actual label. Does that make sense?
Yes. So what I just thought of the plan is to not do organic goats, but organic everything else.
Yes, so keep the
It's like raised on an organic farm.
raised
Yeah.
on
Even
an
if it
organic
wasn't
farm, you just don't
processed.
have the label.
Okay.
Like you don't have the USDA certified organic label, but you're doing the same practices as like the NOP practices.
And once you get bigger, if you have a lot of customers and you can afford going into the organic label, that's the way to do it too.
Yeah.
But start small to see if it works for you first.
When you say small, like what's a starting number to start with? What's small?
You're going to get that in the short activity.
Okay.
Not specifically, but also something I want to say about regulations for slaughtering, it's a bad word, but butchering, processing your animals. If you want to sell to people, you have to be at least state inspected or USDA inspected. If you want to process a goat for yourself, you can go custom. It doesn't need to be inspected, but it's really important that it's inspected because that's the regulation in Arizona.
Yeah.
Some other states don't just have USDA inspected, but we have the option to have state and USDA. Right now it's really hard to find a butcher shop in Arizona that is going to take new customers, so you also have to look at that market. It's really hard to get in. Since COVID, a lot of people went to stores and decided, oh, there's no meat, what do I do? And then now we have a lot of people that want to raise their own meat, but then it's hard. So you can have the animal ready to be butchered, but then you don't have the butcher, so then what do you do with it? You know, so it's complicated.
So it gets old, too old for slaughtering, too old for meat.
Yeah.
Can I mention one other thing?
Yeah.
Because my children raise meat goats for 4-H. There's also a processor, and I don't know all the information, but I could probably find it, who comes in and buys the animals who haven't sold for 4-H, and they process it like a halal. I believe that's like what it is. So it's not processed on the same as beef, which would make you an option for a certain market that might be looking more for that specific thing versus, so like even if you weren't organic, I'm not trying to take over.
No, you're
You know, if you were organic, like if you could have another niche that was like raised on an organic farm and processed halal. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone cares about that, but if you're using goat meat as an alternative to beef, that might be important to somebody.
And she has a good point that with goats, a lot of people are going to come from a different culture and want halal slaughter.
I believe it's law.
It's true.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of kosher or other things.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we had our minute break in questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about best practices. So what you should do. So as I said, you need to do research on the type of livestock and breed that you want to raise before you purchase the animals. We have too many calls, not necessarily in Arizona, but when I was in California, where people have bought the animal and then they ate all of my lamb. What do I do? So don't do that. That'll save you time and money. You need to evaluate the forage production and quality of your land before you purchase the animals. So how many animals can your land support? So that's where we're going to talk about a short activity, and I have a handout for that you can do your own calculation afterwards. And those are just calculation and estimates, so it's not precise, definitely for your land or your situation. So you need to look into your city and county regulation regarding livestock. There are some cities that, for instance, if you want to raise chicken, they don't want roosters because roosters are noisy. I don't have all of those answers, so you need to reach out if you want to go that route. There is some restrictions sometimes with livestock if you're close to a city, so you need to look into that. When you're ready to buy your livestock, you need a good water system, and some of these are going to be very obvious, but I want to make sure you have that in mind. A good fence, because good fences make good neighbors. You're going to hear that from a lot of ranchers. It's very important to have good fences, even if Arizona is open range. Do you know what open range means?
That means you don't have to contain them, right?
Yes, but if you're a landowner, you have some fancy plants that you don't want your neighbor that has goats come eat them, you have to fence them out. That's your duty. But as a small acreage landowner, if you own livestock that does damage to someone else's property and they either live in a no-fence district or have built and maintained a legal fence, you will be guilty of a class misdemeanor 2 and are liable for damages. That's from an older publication I found, so you may want to look into that for your specific cities and counties. And then you need a shelter. It's not necessarily a building, but you need to make sure that they can hide or rest under vegetation. As we said, it's really hot in Phoenix. We don't like to be out in the sun. Well, animals don't like that either that much. And they're really good at finding vegetation for that. You also need some equipment. So you may want to look into corrals, squeeze chute, ear tagging tool, depending on how grow you want your business to be. But if you want to start selling meat, you're going to have inspection on your live animals when you take them to slaughter and things like that. So you need to keep record on your herd. Then you need to have enough forage or the willingness and the money to buy hay and supplement, because as I said earlier, if the animals don't have any forage, then you have to make sure they're not starving, because you want to make a profit out of them. So for instance, goats can bark some trees if they get bored and they have nothing else to eat. So then you have to really anticipate that if you have trees that you really care for. And as I was saying earlier with the toxic plants, if animals don't have any other choices, they're going to force themselves to eat those toxic plants. Then you want to provide them with salt, but sheep are allergic to copper, so don't put salt with copper for sheep. Goats are okay with it, but not too much either. And then if you can do that, that would be great to have several pastures for doing grazing rotation. And when I mean grazing rotation is that, let's say you have 4 pastures in your land, you have 1 pasture that is grazed, then you want to give a rest to that pasture to be able to grow more forage. So then you can turn your animals around and have a better productivity all year round, and it's also better for the land. Then if you have goats or sheep, you want to look into, or chickens, you want to look into livestock guardian dogs. They're an amazing tool. They live with the animals at all times and they're great protectors. We have a lot of coyotes, I guess, around Phoenix. I don't know about other predators, but that would be a good tool. I mean, they eat a lot of food, but they're a great help. And then you need a biosecurity plan for your operations. Or this morning we heard about the issue with a lot of disease. So biosecurity is kind of scary when you want to do a small operation, but it's very important to be aware. And then you need a plan to accomplish your objectives. So you were talking about selling meat directly to customers. So you need to look at, okay, I'm getting goats, that's going to take the time to get them to that point where I can market them. The butcher is really expensive, so then you also have to take that into account. And then please, at least get 2 animals. Those animals need friends. They are going to be a nightmare if they're by themselves and you have to walk with them. So it's for your security and your peace of mind. And so now that you have your livestock on your land, you still need to do something. So you need to get familiar with your animals. You need to know their needs and behavior. If you don't have any experience with livestock, it's good to go see a friend that has some livestock and kind of see if you really want to get into that. Because a lot of people are going to buy livestock and realize, oh my God, it's not like a dog.
I might do that.
But it's too late because they have the animals. So it's really important to start before. And then we have the concept of low stress livestock handling methods. So that's a full mouse. But you want to make sure you walk your livestock quietly, calm. You don't want to be stressed out, you don't want to stress them out, especially if you want to produce meat. An animal that's very stressed is going to be poor meat quality. So it's really important, and it's better for them and it's better for you, because do you really want to wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, I have to go take care of my goats, but I'm scared of them, or I don't want, they're too stressed. It's just be calm when you're around and don't make loud noises. It's not worth it. If you have kids around, just teach them those. It's better for everybody and the safety of anyone handling them. And then you just have to also practice moving or catching your animals. So if you want to catch sheep, for instance, something that's pretty cool about sheep is that once you catch them and you put them on their butt, they play dead. Because that's their way of saying to the predator, I'm dead, don't eat me. And it's pretty interesting to see when you do that it works very well. For cattle, something that's pretty easy, it's the shoulder, which is going to be the point of balance. And that's something that if you're walking on public lands, that's a tip that you might be using if you have cattle that are coming to mess you up, that suck with you. Even if you should not mess with other people's livestock, but it's for your safety to know how cattle move. So if you're behind their shoulder, they're going to move forward. If you're in front of their shoulder, they're going to move backward. And it's really fun to play that point of balance, and they're looking at you and doing that. And then, like horses, if you own horses or like horses, we always tell you, do not be in their back because they cannot see you. It's the same thing with cattle. So imagine you have no one behind yourself, and then someone comes up here, it scares you, right? It's the same for animals. So that's really a safety tool that you have to use. We all have our bubble where we're comfortable. I'm comfortable talking to you here. You might not be as comfortable if I come in your bubble that close. And so that works the same with animals. They're going to react to your presence. And some people are okay. Like maybe I'm that close and it's fine with him, and maybe I have to be that far and it's fine with you. So animals are going to be like this. You need to, at every time, you need to monitor the health of your livestock and your land to make sure that your livestock are healthy, have enough forage, and your land can sustain them. We are in a very dry state. You have good years with good monsoon, and you have bad years with bad monsoon. So sometimes you have to anticipate those bad years. You may be buying a place and it's, oh my gosh, it's wonderfully green. But no one has grazed that place for 10 years. So then when you put animals, it's going to have an impact. And so you have to anticipate that fluctuation on rangelands where it can be raining over there and 1 meter it's not raining. So it's very important to kind of stock your land conservatively, to not have to sell animals when you're in if you have ranchers that have to sell animals during drought, and it's really because they have no choice. They're not going to get the best price for their livestock. And when you spend time grooming them, getting them to know you, or you spend time working on genetics. You don't just want to sell your herd away. You want to keep the best animals for you. And then you want to avoid overgrazing to prevent degradation to the land, erosion, and expenses. So most people, if you talk to them, they don't like cattle, because cattle have overgrazed in the past. But overgrazing is preventable by doing some, like I was saying, if you could make different pasture, that would help that. And you need to be ready to adapt to moving components and have a plan B. Just as I was saying with drought versus rain, maybe, well, this year I have to sell them before they get to their normal weight. And then you need to ask questions to people with experience if you encounter a problem. People love to share their story, their techniques and tips for you to be successful. So don't hesitate. There is no dumb question. It's always good to learn from people that have experience with animals. So I'm going to share a resource that I worked on when I was in California. So, everybody gets land and they're excited about having livestock, and then you have some deception. So we're going to watch a short video of someone in California. Okay.
As I'm in the midst of applying for residency right now.
Yes.
Oh, wish me luck. Grammarly has again been a lifesaver with my application and helping me write my first.
So my alarm clock usually goes off at 5 o'clock. My rooster, Elton, is a pretty good timekeeper for me if I happen to slip through my alarm. And then from there, I go and I feed the cows first. So these girls have the coolest eyes. They match their coat. I feed the horses. And then I go and water gardens and pretty much just do general maintenance. We're technically in a camp in California, but I refer to it as my dream come true. I've wanted to live out on a ranch my entire life, and then I saw this place for sale, and the minute I set foot on this property, I just immediately knew this was my house.
It's fairly common for people who live in the city to have a dream of buying a property in the country and own some animals and have some eggs and have like a view out their backyard window, and it's just sort of get back to the simple things in life. It can be difficult to find information on the topics that small acreage property owners are interested in, and so we want to help provide really good information that can help people take care of the land. Cooperative Extension is a county-based extension of the university, and our job as advisors is to bring research and science to landowners and to ranchers and to farmers to help them solve everyday problems. So that's really our mission. So on a lot of small acreages, you find gardens and the chickens for the eggs, and there's goats for milk or for meat and those sorts of things. And so Stephanie has a lot of those components here, and she's got a lot of really great ideas that she's working on.
Good morning.
So it's obviously a lot of work to live out here and have chickens and goats and horses and cows, but it seems like you really have a passion for what you do. Can you share more about that?
I do have a passion. This is something that I've dreamt about my entire life. I always knew that one day I would have a ranch, but it wasn't until I moved out here is when I really realized that I didn't have all the keys, and that's where you guys played a huge part in helping me get to the next level.
Oh, he's so cute.
My biggest challenge has been the climbing feed bill. So I contacted the UC program. I was able to get one of the colleagues out immediately. We walked the land. They told me what weeds were out here, which ones to worry about, which ones not to worry about, and which ones would go away with the right grasses planted. My plan for this pasture is to plant it with the annual grasses that I planted the back pasture with. But, you know, I've come to find out that the soil is different up here than it is in the back. And that's something that the UC program is helping me realize is soil quality.
And there's some vegetation, or there's some plant material left on the ground when the rain comes. It sort of slows those raindrops down and allows the water to infiltrate better, and so you actually get more effective rainfall that way.
I would love for this place to be 100% self-sustaining and make a profit off of it, to have some income coming off of it. So I'm working with the tools that they provided me that you can't find online. So the reason why I acquired some goats, well, various breeds of goats, was because I used their milk to make soap, and I'm starting to experiment with making cheese. And our little goat, Dottie, who's a Nigerian dwarf, had 3 little babies just last week. We put a trap door on the back to make life easier for getting the eggs out of the nesting boxes. Well, Birdie, protect him over her.
She's like, don't. No, it's mine.
So I'm raising chickens for eggs, and thankfully I sell out every single day, and I have a lot of repeat customers in the area. They're great omelets.
We talk about pasture management, we talk about seeding, we talk about how much livestock can be on the land, and we talk about managing weeds or plants that are not wanted. Understanding what species to plant and what's going to be successful is hot summer temperatures. We're gathering information and putting it all together on the webpage so that some of the most commonly asked questions and even some that maybe are a little more obscure, but they're available on the webpage where someone can go and read about it and learn about it and get information to sort of help answer a lot of those questions that are so common.
The website that they're building is going to become a vital part of the success for myself and everybody else that's starting out and really wants to make their land work for them.
This webpage is funded by a Renewable Resources Education Act grant, and it's a free resource for anyone who needs it. The webpage is a really good way to provide a lot of good background and help fill in some of the gaps and hopefully reduce the learning curve a little bit.
It's gonna be a good resource for you.
Okay, so that's specific to California, but there's some great resource on that website that we're going to look at that are applicable for Arizona too. Let's see. And I have on my hand, I have the website address. And if I'm showing that is because I was part of that team, so I know what we did. And our extension system works the same way. If you have questions, you just ask your agent. So we have, not in every county in Arizona, but we have livestock and natural resources agent that you can reach out to with your questions, so don't hesitate. And that's every state has that in cooperative extension. Okay, so that's the homepage where you have that video that I just showed you. Then you have resources in English and in Spanish, so you have some on livestock, some on rangeland, pasture management, pests, predators and weeds, water quality, wildland fire, emergency preparedness, videos and webinars. So for those of you that thought I was going to talk about chickens, you can go to the livestock page and then you scroll down and then you have all of those. So you have beef cattle, swine, horses, sheep, meat, goats, dairy animals, llama, alpacas, poultry. So let's go to the poultry page. And then you just have description on all of the type of birds that you can look into photos of some of them, how you should take care of them, fencing, and things like that. So it's a very good resource, and it's not specifically there's some information on the website that are specifically for California, but you can also use some good information for Arizona. Earlier I was talking about the importance of fences, so if you go to the Rangeland and Pasture Management one, if you scroll down, so that's a thing specific to California, and then we have something about fencing. And you have all of the different options in fencing. So you can look at prices online, how it's easy to move, how to set them up and things like that. So it's a very good resource for a lot of information that you can find out. Okay. Are you still with me? Do you have any question about that part? No question? Okay.
I kind of do, but
yes.
Is there also information on how to, like, let's say if you wanted to graze sort of regeneratively, like without adding inputs, like without adding extra grasses, without like but just using what you have on your land and sort of grazing in a way, or rotational grazing in a way that kind of gets rid of, like, let's say the weeds you don't want, or increases like the forage that's available for your animals in a way. Like, is there a regenerative way of going about it instead of like adding inputs in that way?
So in a video we talked about seeding because it was a small acreage, but if you have
like a little bit larger,
you don't do that.
No? Okay.
First of all,
I was gonna say, like, that's really tough. Like, let's say if I had 50 acres, like, free for all animals, like, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not an option.
Okay.
It's because it was a small farm. You can also do that more easily if you have irrigation.
Oh, yeah.
But on rangeland, it's really hard to just go out and see the pasture. You have to wait for the rain.
Right.
You have to really time it well, and who knows when it's going to rain. Even the weather forecast is always wrong. So it's impossible on rangeland. There is some trials, but you're not going to ask someone to do that on a big piece of land because it's too complicated and the rate of success is really low. I know some people are looking into that, but there is no option for that.
So is there like a number, like, in your mind where you're like, okay, we're going from like small scale to like, okay, now we're gonna have to have, like, let's say it's 10 acres. Like, if you're going to go past 10 acres, now you have to think about this in a different type of strategy, right?
Yes.
Or, like, is there a size, you think?
So, I would say it depends.
Okay.
People don't like that answer, but it depends on the land you have. Because if it's, for instance, just grassland, it's not going to be the same advice than if you have a lot of mesquite or shrub and things like that. So, it really depends on your land and your operation. But I would say, when you have to take several days to go around all of your pasture, that's big enough to have different way of managing your land.
Different strategy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And regarding your question about how to use grazing for invasive, it's really complicated.
Yeah.
So usually you want to try, and invasive are really smart and really good at spreading themselves, way better than natives. So it's really tricky to get rid of them.
Right.
And sometimes it's impossible and you just have to live with them. So usually if you have a very bad plant that you know that your animals can graze, you're going to want to apply it when it's really green and tender and the animals are going to go for it. If you miss that window, and that window is really short, if you miss that window, then you have to wait next year. And it's not because you're going to be successful 1 year that it's not going to grow back next year. We have what we call a seed bank. We have a lot of seed in the ground, and sometimes it's going to take 5 years to get rid of that. And you can also use your animals. So for instance, if you want to just take care of the plant, but it's not really palatable, you could kind of train your livestock to go to that point by putting some supplement or salt where they're going to spend time just walking around and trampling that vegetation.
Okay.
It's not going to really help not spread the seeds or things like that, but it's going to reduce that for fire prevention, because if you have invasive and livestock are not going to eat it, and then you have a lot of land, it might be also a fire issue or fire risk. But there are some plants that animals don't want to eat, so it's tricky. And you were mentioning about regenerative, so I know that herbicides and everything like this is out of the picture. And sometimes, unfortunately, to be efficient in a plan, you cannot only use one tool. Grazing is one tool, but maybe you should do a herbicide treatment plus grazing, and then fire.
Right, like integrated.
And then now you can only use grazing. So there is different steps to take care of that, but it's really, really tricky to take care of, get rid of invasive.
Okay.
So sometimes you just have to learn to live with them, unfortunately.
That's all good.
So. Okay, any other question?
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to do a short activity. I won't quiz you at the end of the day. It's just to help you kind of know how you can calculate, and that's going to be specifically for grazing animals. I'm sorry, but that's my specialty. So, how many animals can your land support? So, you need to determine how much feed. So it takes grass, forbs, and browse is available for the animals to graze. So first of all, does everybody know what forbs and browse are? Okay, so grasses. You can see the seed head. A forb is going to be a plant that has bigger leaves and usually is a flowering plant, so like a clover would be a forb. And then if we look at browse, it's going to be like mesquite, you have more woody species in it, so it's a little bit harder for the animals to eat that, except goats. And goats are often too smart for their own good. So the goats are the worst at testing fences, so you really need good fences with goats. So I'm going to share with you a way to estimate how much forage you have on your land. And all of that explanation
Sorry.
You're good. All of the explanation here, I have that on a handout for you. It's from a publication, and I have also the publication that explain it. So you could just buy a garden hose. Wait, there's the answers to the, don't.
Oh,
yeah,
I thought
at the end.
Sorry.
Second time, I don't. We have a saying in France, never two without three, so there's another chance.
My bad.
So you can buy a garden hose that's 41 inches and then get a hose connector, and you have a loop. And then you just go in your pasture, like let's say you have a 1 acre pasture, and you just throw behind yourself, because you don't want to aim for the good part of your pasture. You want to have a good average, so you're going to throw it behind you 10 loops, and you're going to clip the only palatable forage that you can identify in that loop. You're going to clip it to ground level, so you want to see dirt.
A sample or all of it?
A sample.
A sample.
In that loop.
Okay, so you've got your loop, and you're just going to do one clipping. You're not going to clip the whole loop.
No, you clip the whole loop.
Clip the whole loop. Got it.
Yeah, everything inside the loop.
Okay.
Yeah, you clip everything. That's the only time you want to see dirt on your land. Okay.
Okay.
And then you're going to combine all of those clipping in one bag. That you're going to make holes in the bag to allow airflow and make it dry out for at least 10 days and check that it's really dry. Then you're going to weigh the bag. Then you take the forage out and you weigh the bag, and that's going to give you the net forage in grams of what you had on your pasture at that time. And you want to do that at peak production. So when is going to be the peak production in Arizona?
Fall, spring.
Post-monsoon?
Post-monsoon.
Oh.
Yes.
What if you don't have your monsoon like this year?
Right now, Southern Arizona is green.
So yeah, it's not worth it to clip it when it's yellow and dry. And so then there's a conversion system from ounces to grams. We're not going to worry about that. And then you multiply that forage, that weight that you got, by 10. That's going to give you, so for instance, we have an example, 10 hoops equals 50 grams times 10. We have 500 pounds per acre of forage. Some places in Arizona are not going to have that much forage, or some places are going to have way more. So it's really just an estimate, and it's important to do it on your land. Don't look at your neighbors, because your neighbors maybe even if they're just 1 meter away from you, they have a different soil, they're going to have a different type of vegetation, and they won't be able to put the same number of animals that you can. That's the issue, I mean, that's a challenge with Arizona where we have so much diversity and it's always changing. And we have a rule of thumb on rangelands. You know, I keep emphasizing that I want you to have livestock have enough forage for you to not have to pay, because hay is pretty expensive. Once you do it, you don't want to do it again. And so what you want to do, we have a rule, is take half, leave half. So if you go to a pasture, you have, let's say, that much feed, that's not that much, but that much feed, you want to only take half of the foam. You don't want to take all of it. Because if you take all of it, as we saw in the video, if you have no cover, then good luck getting rain to stay on your land, and then you're going to have wind erosion, soil erosion, and it's going to be really bad for the long term of your operation. So that means that in that example, we actually have only 250 pounds per acre. And as I said, too many animals on your land could mean overgrazing, which means land degradation, and you want to avoid that. Grazing animals already have a bad reputation, so we want to avoid giving it more. And then you may have to buy supplementation, and that's still possible even if you do a good grazing management. There is times in Arizona where the forage is not high quality, and if you want to put weight on your animals, no matter what you have to do, you may have to put supplements. And often it's going to be in November when the forage is going to dry, or in June when it's super hot. So it's not like, if you have to buy a supplement, don't feel like you're a bad rangeland manager. It's that your animals need it, and that's fine. Usually we say that for a ruminant, for them to be able to eat the forage correctly and use it well, they need to have at least 7% crude protein. We don't have 7% crude protein all year round in Arizona. So that's something you might want to do also, is clip in some of your forage, send it out to lab and see what you have, because that will help you decide if you need to add supplementation. Okay, so then when you ask questions to, for instance, your livestock agent, they're going to start talking about carrying capacity, stocking rate. And so carrying capacity is the number of grazing animals a given area or pasture is able to support without depleting rangeland vegetation or soil resources. So as I was saying, wind erosion, because it's really hard. You were talking about seeding. Once you have bare ground, it's extremely complicated to bring back forage. So it's better to anticipate the issue. And then we're going to talk about animal unit months or animal unit, and it's the amount of forage required by one animal for 1 month. By reference, it supports a 1,000-pound cow per month. And a 1,000-pound cow was very common 50 years ago. Now we're closer to 1,200 or 1,300. So it depends on the breed. But Angus will be a little bit heavier. And so we're going to assume that they eat 25 pounds per day, which is going to be 750 pounds of forage for the whole month for that one cow. You remember how much forage we had, right? Okay. You get my
250.
So here it's a table that's going to explain the difference in animals. And so for instance, cattle, we have the 1,000 pound, it's counted as an animal unit. A horse is going to weigh a bit more, it's going to count more. And so in your mind, just think that that's a quick estimate, but 1 cow equals 5 sheep. Keep that in mind. Just a hint. So how many animals can your land support? I'm going to throw at you a lot of equations that are hard to remember, but you will have them on paper. It's just to kind of explain to you how when you think you have a lot of land and you can grow a lot of animals, it's not really the case, or not necessarily always the case. So we have a total forage production, which is pound per acre, time a proper use factor. So that's what I was using about take half, leave half. some places in Arizona, if there is a lot of forage and a lot of rain, you may be able to take a little bit more. But that's something you just keep in mind. And that's going to be your available forage for your animals. Then we want to look at the available forage in the pasture. So to get to that, we're going to multiply that available forage that we just calculated by the pasture size. Everybody's following so far? Then here are animal unit months in the pasture. So we have our available forage in the pasture from here divided by what we calculated that a cow would eat. So 750 pounds. Okay, now you're going to start working for me. So we have an example of a pasture size, it's 2 acres. We have our 10 hoops and we got 45 grams. Then we have our proper use factor of 50%. And then we still have that cow that eats 750 pounds. So the first question is, what is our total forage production?
It was 250 pounds, right, on 1 acre.
Well, it depends on what's in the hoops. We have
Yes.
45 grams.
Okay,
I changed it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have
45
No,
grams.
not making it
2
too
acres.
easy.
Okay, where's my calculator again? So 45
Total,
grams.
so half of that is 22.5 grams, right? Oh, we gotta turn it into.
So that 45 grams is 12.
It's 45
Yeah, 10
grams
hoops,
because it's
45
2
grams.
acres, right?
Can you go
What did you
back?
say?
Is it,
Yeah.
No.
sorry,
You
45
don't
grams per acre, right? 10 hoops per acre? 45 grams?
So
We don't talk about grams per acre.
No?
We
Okay.
there's 45 grams of dry weight of feed. That's a sample of what we have.
Mhm.
So now we need that formula. We're only gonna take half of that, correct?
It's pounds per
Where
acre.
the proper
So
use.
there's something I said about
Conversion of the grams to the pounds.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So
get going.
I'm going to
I know.
Because we don't remember the conversion.
I was gonna say it's 45
Oh,
and
times
it's,
10.
yeah.
times 10.
Okay, times
Times
10.
10.
Okay.
So that's the easy one. So
Okay.
okay, we're on the same page, we're at
Yes.
450. Now, how much forage is available?
Half of
Half
that.
that.
Half of that.
Perfect.
We all had the half.
Good job.
Times
225.
10 is what.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how much forage is available in the pasture?
That times 2.
Okay. I try to make it easy, you know.
Yeah, no, you're making it great. We're making it difficult.
Okay, and the last question is, how many animal unit months can be in the pasture? You may need your phone to calculate that.
Yeah. And we're using a cow.
Yeah, you have all of the information necessary on the slide.
Okay.
Okay, so
So we've got
750 pounds available per animal.
That's the need of the
The
animal.
need, the need of the animal. That's
available forage.
So you know, we have AUM here. If you see AUM here, you have the formula that you're supposed to use.
So I did 450 divided by 750,
Yes.
and I got 0.6.
Okay.
So that's
What does it mean?
You can only have half a cow.
I have 5 goats, 4 goats.
So half a cow for how much time?
A month.
A month, only half, you don't have enough to feed the cow.
2 weeks. You got
Right, you better
Just
rent it,
enough
don't
time.
buy it.
If you're
Rent
only
it for
2
2
acres,
weeks.
yeah.
So yeah, you have
8 goats.
one cow can graze this 2 acre pasture in 18 days,
That is not enough.
and you're done.
Yeah.
One cow can take your whole thing out.
So let's
I'm not trying to be pessimist in my talk. I'm just trying to be realistic that
Very
sometimes we get
realistic.
excited about